Hi everyone! So thank you so much for coming to my screening of my final major project film. It's called Why Buy. But yeah, I really appreciate everyone being here and everyone who took part in the project and supported me. So yeah, I'm really excited for you all to watch it today. It's 13 minutes long, so it's not that long, but it's really good. So yeah, so here we go.
Yay!
So yeah, just to introduce the panel. So I'm speaking to some of my lovely interviewees today. We've got Giovanna from The Fashion Blueprint. We've got Danny, who is a master upcycler, which is a title I love. And then we've got Amira, who also has an upcycling brand. And then Katie, who is an artist, who also does upcycling. And then we've got Sarah, who runs Fashion Act Now, so activism. So yeah. I think the question that I would want to ask everyone first is just like, is there one part of the film in particular that like stands out to you the most, perhaps, or like really made you think, or reminded you of something else?
Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I think it's nice. I can't remember who said it, but talking about upcycling as something that doesn't have to be building a huge business or doing something, you don't have to have like necessarily loads of people behind you, loads of money. It can be a kind of small action from yourself in the morning when you're getting dressed, or with your friends before you're going out. I think it's important to think of it in this way that is relevant to these sort of small moments of our lives, rather than having to build a huge brand necessarily. I can't remember who said it, but
It was Marta.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point as well, because when you're thinking about like climate change, it could just be so overwhelming of like, what can I actually do? But in reality, you can do things instead of buying stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts about like a particular part of the film, perhaps?
Yeah. One of the parts that stood out to me the most was actually when we started talking about identity and touching on the fact that fashion is a way of people to express themselves and who they are, as well as who they want to be. And oftentimes when we look at social media and consumption, it all kind of like ties back to the same topic of identity. So that was just one area that really stood out to me, because going forward, if we're looking at sustainable fashion, upcycling, or other solutions like not buying at all, I still think we need to, I guess because my background is in marketing, sales, and CRM. I always think about how to then almost like sell sustainability to people, and whether we like it or not, it's not going to be an overnight change, especially not at a mass level. So it makes me think of how we can then almost repackage sustainable fashion as something that people then see as a core value to them, or something that can then tie back to their identity again. So that was something that stood out to me, and something that I'm thinking about a lot, actually.
Yeah, and I really wanted to highlight that, like how it's fun because you can like get something that no one else has, or like make something you want just from your brain instead of buying it. So I think it's really important to think about it in like an aspirational way, rather than just like something you have to do. Yeah.
I honestly really appreciate you doing all of this, Cody, and putting this all together, because just putting things like upcycling on the map, because we were having a conversation before it started, and sometimes it still feels like there are places where people think, oh, it's just handmade. And it's not. It's so creative to be able to take something that's already existing and actually flip it into something totally different, and actually even really make it look like, oh, this was a top and now it's a skirt, or it's a hat, or it's something. And even being able to take people's memories, like this little bag that I'm wearing is from my dad's blazer, which was changed into a two-piece, but now it's like, okay, it's a little bag that I can keep my stuff in, but still keep it with me, or making memory bears is so much bigger than just it being crap that we've made something cool out of it. No, we've actually continued a memory, which is great. So thank you for highlighting it.
Oh, that's really sweet. Thank you.
So I think near the end when the babe from Fast Fashion was on, and she mentioned obviously about like exploitation and stuff. I think it just like sparked something for me, and it was more about like, I guess with sustainability, we are very privileged that we don't see the mess of overconsumption, and we're never exposed to that. And so we're not seeing these landfills. We're not seeing like we don't have this direct connection to, you know, the exploitation. So it's so easy to kind of like, I guess, separate yourself from the effects of kind of a capitalistic society. And I think as time has gone on, and obviously because we have this privilege, unfortunately, when you do get closer to something like that. So for instance, I was chatting with my friend Jadzia, the other redhead, and we was kind of speaking a little bit about this on the way here. And then, so there's, you know, a lot of things going on right now globally. I'm from Sudan, and there's like a war going on there. And a lot of my family migrated to Egypt, and they had to try and sustain themselves. And so my aunt, she's actually working in a sweatshop. And for me, I've never had that direct connection to, I guess, the start of the trail of kind of like, you know, yeah, exactly, yeah. And so I think seeing that, and then seeing the types of people that get exploited, like through the chain, is just, I don't know, it's just like a eye opener. And I think if we were more kind of exposed to that kind of line, I think then that could also help us in this kind of push for sustainability, because it's not just like, oh yeah, we're just trying to be sustainable. It's like, no, this is like a huge thing. And this is like, it's not only just like kind of messing up the weather, like this is like really playing a part in so many different forms that we just can't see ourselves.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The thing that I thought was, is this working?
Yeah, it's working.
The thing that I thought was really well explained in the film was that we are living in a culture of advertising. And was she a professor from Sussex University?
Dr. Eleftherae Lagagis.
She said that social media, they are advertising platforms. We call them social media platforms, but they are advertising platforms. We got to think about, like, what is this thing actually serving? It's not really, yes, of course you can create social bonds through social media, and it doesn't have to be this way. And, you know, you're all people who are doing it differently, using it in different ways. But we do also have to think, what is this thing serving?
Yeah, it was just like the continued exposure. Like that was kind of the reason why I wanted to make the film, because it's just like, if I go on my feed and I count the amount of adverts, or even just like, you know, tagging all the brands, like everything is so related to what you own. So yeah, I think it's interesting to like question this and how it can impact us. The next thing I would want to ask is kind of related back to that point of social media. And does anyone have any like burning thoughts of like, is social media making us shop more? Or is that just like total generalization? Or anyone has any personal experiences of this?
100%. I mean, yeah, without doubt, social media definitely makes us like shop more. I think just like to the point of like, I really love the visuals where you was like putting like the things and it was like. I really like that. Yeah, you ate with that.
Shout out, Rose.
But I generally do feel like it does, especially like the digital era that we're living in right now, and like with like, I guess things getting like, we kind of have a goldfish kind of mentality at the moment. Like, it's like grab people's attention in the first 2-3 seconds, and if you don't grab their attention, like you're kind of on to the next. And so if that first advertisement didn't hit for you, maybe that second one is, or maybe that third one is, or maybe that fourth one is, and there's just so many things, you know. And like the way that like trends like jump up, switch, reverse, like pop it, lock it, all of that, they just like, it's just, it makes you feel like you want to jump on and you want to do this and you want to get that. And it's just like, I think with Shein and like Temu and like how like they'll take like these designers' outfits, put them on like Shein and Temu, sell it for like £2, £3, and people are like, why am I going to spend this amount on a designer's outfit when I can just spend like some chicken shop money on that? Yeah, it doesn't make sense, right? And so I feel like social media does play such a huge part in our like overconsumption.
And at the moment, like, obviously we're talking about fashion, but what a lot of people don't realise, because I have friends that say, oh no, it doesn't faze me. My cousin, she's the worst, for example. She doesn't buy anything on TikTok, but even beauty products. So there's the whole, the consumption through everything that's going on. But jumping on what Amira was saying about Temu and Shein taking stuff, like, not taking stuff, but there are certain styles that I make. And I've had some of my clients come to me, because I do alterations as well, and they're like, oh, Dan, can you fix this skirt for me? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, you know I make something like that. So wherever you got it from, ask them to do it. But, sorry, I flipped. Sorry, I just had to add that. I had to add that, because obviously it's still burning me. But yeah, to what you were saying, absolutely, social media will just, I don't know, I feel really grateful that I feel like I skipped it, because, you know, when I was younger, there wasn't that much advertising. So when I was out there wanting to buy stuff, so from when I've been upcycling and just really, I have the mentality of, I can make that. So when I see these adverts or I see something, I'm like, oh, that's nice, I'm gonna make that one. So I feel really grateful for more of the, I say young people, but I feel like my generation of like 40s and stuff, they're worse. Because when I see like you young people, a lot of you guys are really up there and understand the whole thing of buying secondhand and buying sustainably and sourcing and swapping. My people, they're just like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, you lot don't know what you're missing. That's why I always look good, so it's whatever.
And one of the things that I wanted to actually touch on as well, in answer to your question, is social media making us buy more? Definitely. But it's also because if we look at marketing historically, it was kind of like strategic, but it was more protected. So it kind of came directly from the companies themselves. They had campaigns, and then perhaps they would use maybe a celebrity endorsement to push those collections out. But they had stricter channels, whereas now with social media, being an influencer is almost like an aspiration for a lot of people. That job didn't exist like 15 years ago or 20 years ago. And what that's done is that in this room, we could maybe historically we would have had maybe one person that is influential enough, or maybe no one in this room would have been influential enough to sell out a collection for a brand. But now, where everybody or a lot of people are using their own social media channels to promote brands, what that does is every time you go on a social media platform, which is addictive by nature, you're being bombarded with all of these messages. And that's something that was actually addressed in the short film. And it was about the fact that social media or marketing is actually manipulating people into thinking that they're not good enough as they are, and because trends come and go really, really fast, people feel inadequate, and they feel like actually to keep up and to appear current or to be the person that they really want to portray themselves as, they constantly have to update their wardrobes or jump onto the latest beauty trend. Sometimes it might even be hairstyles, and there are just so many different trends fluctuating at once, which people are consuming via social media, that it then kind of like translates into people constantly having to buy, which is why the Sheins and the Temus, and let's not forget the Pretty Little Things and the Misguideds, flourish because trends come and go really fast. So why should people invest money into an item of clothing when they actually know that maybe perhaps in 3 months they might be jumping onto another trend and pursuing a different identity now? So that is definitely a key reason why social media makes people buy more. It's addictive, they're being manipulated, but also they're contributing to it themselves. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Before, you used to look at magazines and they would describe like a moment that was happening. Like somebody, like, let's say the Britney moment. They would describe that and that would be a trend. But like now, you just keep getting algorithms making these new trends, like Mob Wife, that was like 2 months ago, it was fun, but it's not anymore. And they keep going in and out. So how do you stay out of the loop of the algorithm? How do we go back to the moment where somebody would create something and you just follow that instead of trying to follow these trends and, well, invest in fast fashion just to stay up to date with trends, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it's crazy because even the trends that I kind of feature in the film are like almost out of date now. So that's crazy.
That's a really difficult question to answer, to be honest, because I could just say, well, don't look at your phone. Just stay off of social media, easy, done. But really and truly, I think if we're thinking of changing systems, one thing you touched on, which was actually quite interesting, was how maybe back in the day, you'd get your trends inspiration from magazines and the media kind of like dictated what was cool. But it goes back to my point where now anyone can dictate what's cool and anyone can create their own trends. So now to stay current, people feel like maybe they have to go on social media. It's also quite entertaining. So I don't think people are actually aware of the fact that they're consuming as much as they do because it's just now become part of the norm. So in answer to your question, what can we do to kind of like reverse the cycle? I definitely think that in the same way that everyone can contribute to the issue, everyone can contribute to the solution. And it starts in rooms like this, and it starts with short films like this where first, you're gaining more knowledge about what the issue is, but also you have to acknowledge your own power and your own influence in your everyday life, and how even in the short film we discuss community and how you can influence your immediate community to change their habits. Like, my friends all know I'm that annoying friend that's like, oh my gosh, this is so nice, where's it from? The minute they say Zara, I'm like, ugh. Okay. and Zara is quite a popular high street brand. Literally everybody shops from Zara, but literally I stand so firm on the fact that I don't buy fast fashion and I don't support it. So all of my friends know, and it's like, I'm just one person, but if everybody else who is more, I guess, conscious when it comes to fashion and consumption was to have like a firm attitude towards how they, I guess, perceive fashion and how they participate in fashion in general, then we all have power to change the system, you know? So it's a collective effort. That's the short answer, in my view.
I also just want to add, when it comes to the algorithm, it basically shows us everything that we're looking at. So, like, for example, I've been training. Sorry, it has nothing to do with this, but I've been training. My feed is full of big fat booties, and it's full of muscles, and it's full of gains and stuff, because that's what I've been looking at, and I've been watching the videos for more than those 3 seconds, and I've been liking them. So you have to look at it as, am I spending maybe too much time on this? Am I spending too much time on the unboxings and stuff? Like, whether I like it or not, but maybe it was a little bit cute. So who are you following? Who are you getting inspired by? How much, whether you're liking it or not, if you're spending a little bit of time on it, it's going to show you more of it. So we are in control. Like you were saying, we're in control of what we like. And if there's maybe someone that you follow and they're doing too much of it now, like all of a sudden they've become that influencer and you're like, I'm not feeling their content, you can mute them. And you can make them unfollow you. Like, you have the power. So we do have some power. A lot of people just don't know about it. And sometimes we're lazy, like, oh, can't bother to go in my list and unfollow people or make them unfollow me, because then now my followers go down. But if you don't want to see it, sometimes we got to do the work as well. So, exactly.
Yeah, I actually do have something to say. Do I hold this down now?
It's fine.
Yeah, I think that's really touched on something, because I think the collective effort that we talk about is super important, and the community that comes from these sort of practices. However, it does come down to an individual level of discipline with these sorts of apps, because I think for me, that's what having a making practice really, really helps, is to get away from sort of the external noise and to come back to yourself and your body and your like using your hands to make things, like that's what really allows me to step away from these sort of external influences all the time. So I think that discipline and self-awareness to really tap into your body and your making is really important, because it at the end of the day, most of us, not all of us, but a lot of us are addicted to these apps, and so it is a psychological thing, and so it has to be kind of tapped into in that way, if that makes sense.
It's not going to go away, is it? So I kind of think we have to dig deep. And I said before, I think the thing that stood out to me from the film was this idea that we live in a culture of advertising. But it's more than that. Our civilization, at least us here in the room, I think there's different civilizations that are on this planet, but us here, we're kind of living in this civilization that our identities are based on consumerism, and the very idea of development, of progression, of modernity is that we move from traditional subsistence communities into high mass consumerist societies in which, like, we have a role to play in economic growth. We are meant to consume, and we're also meant to produce. And I don't think we have to live in that way. I think we can break out of that, but it's not an easy thing to do. I think we can look at other societies that are organized around a kind of reproduction of life, in that everything you do is about enriching lives, enriching human lives, but also enriching the nature around you. Really, that's what I think humanity should be about. And we've got really lost. So I think we have to question our whole civilization and where we're headed, because otherwise it's just going to keep going on the trajectory that we're going in. Sorry, didn't mean to change the mood.
Yeah, no, it's true. And like, that's what kept on coming up through all the interviews. It's like almost this herd mentality, and like everyone just doing the same thing, and like wanting to be part of a community as well was like a big point that I tried to emphasize. So yeah, no, I think it's really interesting. I guess on that note, another thing that I'd love to ask you guys is like, does anyone have like one reason that they think you should just not buy anything new or have like a shopping break? Because I wanted to make this film as well after spending about 6 months like not buying anything because I was an unpaid intern. I had no money, and I just realized I didn't really need anything anymore. So yeah, I kind of spoke to you all about it in our individual interviews, like that it can actually have some benefits, because I realized like, wait, I don't need this much new stuff, especially when you go through your wardrobe and you're like, oh my God. So yeah.
I think when you allow yourself time not to buy new, you make space for practicing resourcefulness, which I think practicing resourcefulness also allows you to discover new things about yourself, and maybe allows you to just develop your own style in a new and probably more authentic and instinctive way. Because I think a lot to do with upcycling is to do with instinct, because the clothes are already there. It's like, how do you then, how does your sort of body or brain, how does it make it into something that fits like your vibe in that moment? So I think a good reason to buy new is to discover something new about yourself, or what you actually like, as opposed to what you're being told to like.
I agree with what you said. I feel like just jumping off of that, the reason why I got into upcycling was actually because like a lack of things in a way. Like I wasn't really able to afford to jump on the the latest trends, or didn't like afford to get the types of clothes that I wanted. So like in that also comes with like maybe like taking a break from buying allows you to be creative. So then it started off like, I have this top, but I don't really like it no more. Just cut up another top and just safety pinned it on, like before I even know how to sew. And there was just certain ways that you can just like make something from something else. And honestly, like a lot of the stuff when I started off were terrible, honestly, like so bad. I was just walking around just like, yeah. But like they were like maybe relative at the time, but like, I feel like everyone's got their own journey within it, but it does allow some type of form of creativity, and also like allows you to kind of like, I don't know, just like experiment with what you have. And in that as well, you're feeling like you'll be gassed. Like you'll be like, hey, like I feel good, like all of this kind of stuff. And I feel like that doesn't come like if I go and buy like, about 10 things off of like online, like I'm like, hey, yeah, that's nice, but you don't feel like, yeah, I did that, So like, it could just be something simple. Like I know sustainability sounds so scary sometimes, and it's like, oh man, but I can't do that, I can't sew, I can't do this. But it's like, actually, we have a lot of resources we can use, like whether it's like, I don't know, let's say you have a skirt and trousers at the house and you're like, oh, like I've been wearing a skirt all the time, I've been wearing these trousers. Well, wear the skirt and the trousers. That's, boom, outfit. Yeah. Like, it's
wearing a skirt as a top, like
period.
Wearing trousers as a top, like
Yeah.
all of that. I also started upcycling as a means of lack of. So in 2000, when I was doing performing arts, and I was obsessed with fame and flash dance. So I wanted to act like I was in the 80s. So I would take my hooded jumpers, they were mostly Gap, and take my hooded jumpers and cut the necks off, cut the hoodies off, and we'll have off-the-shoulder tops, and take the arms and make them into leg warmers. And for the last 20 plus years, I've seen these styles come back around. So whatever you're buying, or whatever you probably already have, like you might get rid of it because, it's out of fashion now. It's gonna come back in 2 weeks. Like they'll be wearing it again. And to be honest, the honest truth is the quality is so. Am I allowed to say the S word?
Yeah.
The quality is shit. The quality of the clothes that is getting made now is shit. And not only in the fast fashion, not only in the Temus and Sheins and Pretty Little Things, but even in the actual high street brands. Like, I've seen the quality. I don't shop either anymore, but I was with my uncle the other day and he was looking for something. And the quality of these clothes, like even in places like COS, which is a higher end.
But they get all made in the same place.
They're all made in the same
It's
place, guys.
branding.
Zara is just a cute little bowed Shein.
Literally, they invented fast fashion, and I actually think Zara get away with so much.
They do.
Because we focus on the we focus on the ultra fast fashion companies, but Zara literally invented fast fashion from being able to copy trends and have them on the shop floor within 2 weeks. And now they kind of just like get away with it just because there's worse with the rise of, I guess, online shopping and stuff. But in terms of like, for example, my why and why I just make sure that I exercise my power when it comes to consumerism is because from having a background in fashion, I know how companies use data to make decisions. And in every purchase, you're essentially telling a brand what they should create more of. So if, for example, I know that from being within the fashion industry, there is a rising trend in conscious fashion, whatever that means, sustainable consumption, or whether it's just more organic materials or regenerative business models, there will be more fashion brands wanting to do that because the demand ultimately is telling them to go in that direction. And what that does is it then tells investors to put more money into the businesses that are catering to those trends. So the fact that I know how brands utilize data to make their decisions is what then makes me not want to partake in fast fashion, as well as the fact that So I'm West African. I come from a country called Guinea-Bissau, and a lot of the waste that comes from what fashion brands don't sell actually gets dumped in countries like mine or other countries in the global south in general, and that causes what was now known as waste colonialism. And it doesn't just happen in fashion, it actually happens across the board in tech, automotive, everything else. But because I am in fashion, I guess I'm like closer to the problem in that sense. And where you have visibility of the full supply chain, you were touching on that earlier, actually, talking about your auntie, where you have full visibility of the supply chain and you actually see the effects that, one, for example, we can say that social media really affects people's mental health negatively by making them feel like they're not worthy. So even from the consumer's end of the spectrum, it's quite damaging. But then when we look at overconsumption and overproduction from like an environmental point of view and how it affects local communities in the countries where the waste is then dumped into, it makes me think, why should I contribute to that? Because ultimately it's I say my, but it's all of our, I guess, consumer habits and purchase behavior that's then creating that bigger problem. And a lot of people maybe don't want to take accountability for that because also it's on brands to change their business models. They don't have to push over consumption or partake in overproduction. But ultimately, it all boils down to capitalism. And for as long as capitalism exists, it will be very, very difficult for us to reverse the system because that's how capitalism thrives, off of exploitation. So my why is just having visibility of both ends of the spectrum and not wanting to take part in that and fueling that. Yeah.
I guess like building on kind of like the question that Rose asked about what people can actually do on like a personal level to kind of like get around this or help like just be more considerate with what you buy. Does anyone have any kind of like advice or other things that they do that they'd like to share?
One thing I say, I am not up here to tell people what to do. I'm not up here to say, you guys should all start making your stuff and you should shop in charity shops. My only thing to say, like, honestly, if you're going to shop fast fashion or you're going to shop, high street, know why you're buying it. Have a reason to buy it and buy it with intention. Buy it with the intention that you want to re-wear it. Because instead of like, oh, I've got an event today or I'm just going to a pink party, so I'm going to buy this pink thing. And then you're not going to wear it again. Or read the reviews on these fast fashion sites. They have reviews where people will say how the item looks or how it turned up, and they have pictures of it to show how see-through it is because you're not seeing that in the pictures with the models. So really look at the item and make sure it's something that you want to re-wear. And when you're buying it, will I re-wear this? How will I re-wear it? What can I re-wear it with? And just kind of be more be more mindful when you're buying these things. Like, want to re-wear it and buy it because you love it, not just because, oh, I saw someone wearing it online today.
I mean, it's quite similar to what you're saying, but like, just buy things that are meaningful because it's not going to go away, right? Like, you can give it to the charity shop, but then they have to deal with it and it might end up somewhere in the global south. So buy things that are meaningful. And if you can, buy something where you actually create a relationship with that person you bought it from, and they have a relationship with other people that they might have got the materials from. Like, I think it's a good way to kind of build human connections and meaning.
Just want to say, my skirt, Callie, who's in the audience, made it. So thank you. Yeah, evidence of that point.
I was going to say, I think just moderation is key. Like, about like, probably like 85% is sustainable or like, clothes I'll get from charity shops, Vinted, whatever. Vinted is a really good place as well. That's a good use of social media. But like there'll be that 10%, that like 10-15% where I will buy online. But again, it is more intentional and I'm getting it like for a reason. And I'm not like, it's also with like what you lot saying, like I don't think you need to, obviously, it's important to have people that are 100% sustainable to help carry the people that aren't. However, that good balance in life. But like, you don't need to be so strict on yourself if you feel like that's not something within your means to be able to do, because I know, like, realistically, a lot of people work like all the time, this and this. So it's like, you need to find ways to try and adopt that into your life. If you only have like an hour of your day to maybe like find some clothes, like, you might not have the time to go to a charity shop or go thrifting, because that can take some time for you to find your right outfit, find this, that. And so if you do really need to like buy clothes, again, it is just like intentional and moderation. Like, you don't need to, I think it's not necessary to be doing like hauls of things like every week and stuff. I feel like just being very intentional with what you buy is important. And also clothes swaps. I feel like clothes swaps, when I had a studio, I used to love clothes swaps, because it's just like, realistically, I feel like most people, like, and their friends, you can even just do it with your friends, like, just get everybody together, be like, okay, winter's coming up, everybody, like, put your jackets in that you don't want to wear for this winter, and then everyone just go, and then they'll just pick different jackets that they want to take and then just swap it. Just keep it in rotation, yeah. Because that's a good way of you, like, if you don't want to stop, like, changing your clothes all the time, clothes swaps are the best way for you to, like, somewhat feel like you're still in that habit of it, but you're not, in a way, and you can still have an individual style if you don't have time to upcycle your clothes, etc., etc. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like everyone kind of covered it, to be honest. But I think sometimes maybe it's good to put sanctions on yourself. Like, if you don't have any money, obviously you don't have to pretend not to have any money. But if you do have a bit of money for it, maybe you could pretend that you didn't. And then, so then in these moments, sometimes is when you're like forced to think of a solution or to kind of manifest a solution. I don't know, sometimes, you just spot something on the street, or you just spot something when you're on a walk, or your friend will be wearing something and you'll say, can I borrow that? So I think sometimes when you're in those positions where you have to think of another way, then that's when you can kind of think of it.
Can I just add one more thing? I can guarantee that what the outfit that anyone here might need, like you might have a wedding coming up, guarantee you've got the outfit in your wardrobe already. And we forget that. We've got it in our wardrobe. Maybe you haven't looked at it in a while. Maybe you wore it, 2 years ago. If you're never going to wear it again, just get rid of it. But it's already in there. And rewear it. Rewear your clothes. Listen, if it looks good on you, rewear it. Like,
That's a good point.
Do you know what I'm saying?
People take pictures and then they don't want to.
But you took pictures because it looked good. And so you're like, you know what, the next time I wear this, at least you know you're going to look good in it. Like, and so that's my, yeah.
Can I jump on that real quick? Do you know what that one wear, one thing is also like down to like celeb culture and stuff? And they are real big on there. Yeah, if I wear it once, you ain't seeing me again in that. Like, come on, let's be real. Let's be real. Like, put it on again. Let's see it again. Like, why not? If it look good, yeah, like, wear it again. Yeah, nah, for real. Like, and I feel like that really gets into your head though. Like, you think that, oh no, you shouldn't be seen in this thing. But also we need to remember that these celebrities, like, they, like, most of the clothes that they're wearing one time and they'll be like, yeah, you won't see me in that again, is also because, like, yeah, I was about to say that. So Jazzy is a stylist, and so I could just see that, like, it just, like, you get things from designers, you rent it out one time or da-da-da-da, like, so they can do that. They could, like, okay, they'll have that. So I think it's like you were saying as well, like, kind of just like it's the dream as opposed to the item in a way. So I think that's really important.
There's fashion rental as well. If you're, like, for example, I don't know, going to a wedding, if there's any occasion and you just want to maybe experiment more with your style, there is fashion rental available if you don't want to do clothes swaps, or if you feel like your wardrobe is worth more than your friends' wardrobes, for example. You can still actually list your items online, make some money, so the items you're not wearing are actually still in circulation and other people still get to enjoy them. But then you can also tap into other people's wardrobes in that way. So that's another way to kind of like tap into fashion, update your wardrobe, your style, and still get excited by your outfits without necessarily having to own things. But yeah.
Yeah. Unless anyone else has anything to add, I would love to hear some questions from the audience.
I think it's not too hard to imagine convincing people to stay away from fast fashion if you're someone who has like an existing interest in expressing yourself through fashion. But what I find really difficult is to get people to make that first step to care and think critically about fashion when it's not a passion of theirs, when they don't feel the need to creatively express themselves through what they wear, and they're not already invested or in communities that are focused on sustainability or like ethical existence. And a part of me wants to say like, quote unquote, like just normal as people who are just living their lives. Obviously we are all normal people as well, but like normal in the sense that they're not actively critically, they take their surroundings as normal and the ideas that are presented in this way. And like what have your experiences been in trying to kind of convincing people to care, or what have you noticed in how we can kind of make that step towards people reflecting more critically on their consumption habits?
I think that's such a good question, and it's definitely something I've put some thought into, because a lot of the times if you're within sustainable fashion or you're just a more conscious person, we do tend to communicate in echo chambers, and people outside of those echo chambers just have no interest in it. And actually, maybe they're just focusing on survival. They don't have time to be listening to how the clothes are made or where they come from. And actually, in my view and in how I interpret that problem, it shouldn't be their responsibility, actually, because you, as a corporate company, as a brand, should actually take your CSR more seriously. And ultimately, it's up to the companies that created the problem to solve it. And it's up to the government. I feel like we don't talk enough about how the government are not doing their job. They're not doing their job. And if there were more laws in place, regulation in place, and more auditing in place, companies would have no choice but to be more sustainable. And that's not happening at the moment. So I guess it goes back to the pressure groups, for example, and the movements that are like forcing or trying to force governments to actually make a change, you know? But anyone else want to answer that?
On what you said as well, because you said earlier about how you was in marketing and like how, I guess, the demand of whatever somebody kind of like, what they buy, that then will reflect on what they want to sell and what they'll produce more, right? So within that, in a way, I think the people that can help play a part in that would be the people that are within those kind of like things, whether it's like even like micro-influencers, influencers, a little bit like, you know, people with some sort of thing, because they will be the ones that in one way, like they kind of influence that kind of group of people, that kind of group of people, that kind of group. And those group of people, so there's one person there, they're influencing 5 people there, that one person there, 5 people. Like these people there, they're the ones that can really help the change.
Just to add to that quickly, I think it's what you're saying is we have to infiltrate the system. Yeah. Those of us who are more conscious have to be radical, but from within, rather than kind of like commenting on things as if it's like a separate issue. It's like actually exercising our power by going into these structures and creating change from within and influencing people who can make that change. That's how I interpret that.
Yeah. Just to build on that, I think a lot of people don't understand what goes into making an item of clothing. I think some people literally think that it just like pops out of a machine or something. But like, there's so many hands that have touched an item of clothing before it finishes, you know, before it's like an item of clothing. And those skills used to be taught, you know, like your mother or your grandmother would teach you those skills, or you'd be taught at school, but that doesn't really seem to happen anymore. So I think we kind of need to bring that back. But I think, you know, all the upcycling and everything, it does help do that. You are teaching people what goes into making stuff. But yeah, I feel like, we all have a role to play in that.
We do have a responsibility to what you're saying, have a responsibility of help it, just how are we going to get people interested that aren't? And for me, like a lot of my friends and family weren't. And I found that I was getting frustrated because I wanted people just to pay attention and jump on my wave and everything. But, you know, do what you want, innit? So it was just a case of just, for me, I can only be responsible for myself and just keep doing it and just keep showing up and keep being consistent. And what happened was that people did start paying attention and they did start noticing. And it was just during lockdown them saying, wow, I didn't know I could do this. I didn't know that this was available. How do you think to do something like that? And then those people, it could be 2 years later, have now come back to me and have said, Dan, I've got this thing, can you help me? So it takes time and it's just keep going. But even everyone here listening, if you like what you're hearing, whether you're involved or maybe this is the first time you've been to something like this, keep talking about it. Keep sharing your friends. If you have friends and family or you know people that do it, share their stuff. Just so that people are more aware of it. And I don't know, I feel like people are aware, but it's whatever they decide to focus on and put their mental algorithms to.
Does anyone have any more questions for the panel? Hey.
Great film and lovely talk, guys. I think we've seen like big companies, the H&Ms and stuff, I think we've seen them at least pretend to become a bit more conscious of this, right? Like, there's a lot of greenwashing going on. Do you think these companies are too far gone? Or do you think there are changes that can be made? Or is it just cut and dry now? We need to think of different things we can do. Do you think these things are genuine? I think I know what I think, but I'd love to just hear you guys like explore that, what you think about that, because we see it a lot. We see World Recycle Week from H&M. We see things like this. We see things like that. I want to know what you guys think about things like that. Is it all performative? Is there passion? No? What?
Honestly, I think it's performative because their core business model relies on overproduction or producing at the cheapest possible cost price to then sell at the highest possible markup that they can for a high street brand. So yes, they can have initiatives, they can have all the labs in the world. And sometimes they even kind of like incubate some companies that are creating more, sustainable business models or technologies. But your core business model has not changed. So, and that is what the issue is. So how can you then claim to contribute to more circular initiatives when, as a company, you do exploit people and you do exploit the environment as your main bread and butter? So, and that's not just even the high street brands, it's actually all of the main fashion brands. And it goes back to the fact that perhaps maybe fashion was actually never made to be commercialized. Maybe fashion was always supposed to be made at a local level using local artisans and local materials so that you're not then over-extracting and then having to ship things in large quantities across the globe back and forth. And ultimately, I don't believe that the system as a whole can ever be truly sustainable, but those big fashion brands are definitely pretending. It's not real. It's greenwashing at its finest. So that's just my point of view.
I don't have much to say, but I absolutely agree. I do think a lot of it is performative, but they're getting away with it because people are still buying into it. So, yeah.
I think just really ultimately what you can do is just shop local. I think that's really just the best. I think we could see now in so many different aspects how much beyond clothing, how much our money that goes into these brands basically just kind of end in like absolute like catastrophic like issues globally. So like with the boycotting right now and everything, you can see how much I can make a difference on brands, and like how much has been lost with these kind of things. But that's why it's so important as a community, and people, if they come together, they can do something the same way you can come together and like build up local kind of like designers or local like shops that find designers or whatever it is that is a sustainable kind of like approach. You can also help elevate that and push that in a wider sense.
Yeah, I kind of want to know what you think, but I don't know. I am unsure on this. I think when the motivation is financial, I wonder how it can ever truly be sustainable. But I also think that you hear certain things about that they'll employ a sustainability person within the company, and that person just happens to be this like crazy scientist whose motivations are only how do we make this thing sustainable, and they can kind of infiltrate different parts of the company, and it's about changing all those different parts of, I can't remember what it's called, like different parts of the company, different areas, changing their motivations, and I just wonder how you do that. I don't really know. It's too much for me.
I think you're right in that I think there are people within these companies who really want change. And that might even go all the way to the top of the company. But then we have to look at how is the company structured and what is its purpose. Its purpose, if it's a big multinational company, is to create profit for its shareholders. And they're essentially machines for economic growth. And economic growth it is coupled with the use of energy and materials and the extraction of materials. You can have like a relative decoupling, but relative decoupling is slow to do. We cannot create a sustainable economy whilst also growing it. It just won't happen in time. It will be like, in 1,000 years or something, if that. So we have to look at this growth paradigm that we exist in. I think there is something that can be done. I mean, there's many things that can be done. I think a really big thing that can be done when you're thinking about these companies is we need to move towards economic democracy. So that means at the moment, we don't have a say in what our economy is producing. If we work in a company, we don't really have, or even a consumer of products, we don't have a say in what is being produced and how it's being produced. And we should be able to debate these things, and our voice should actually have like some power. So I think, if all companies had to be like non-profit cooperatives, that would be a huge shift. But if you have these big companies that exist for shareholders, it's not going to become sustainable. It can become a little bit more sustainable, but nowhere near what we need to be seeing, because they need to grow.
It's kind of a piggyback off that question. I'm not sure to what extent you can answer this, but it's about like digital clothing and like the passport. I'm not sure that anybody knows, but Mugler, they had like a release of these like shoes. And if you bought them, you get like a digital passport of where it came from beginning to end. And you also got the digital version, I think in Fortnite to wear. So it's like, what do you feel about digital clothing, the whole new passport thing that's coming? Because I used to work like in a fashion house, and by 2030, the European Union, like they're pushing brands to be more sustainable and adjusting to this, like telling customers from the beginning where does the clothing like travel to, just to see like how much sustainable it is. So what's your like thought on that, and like digitalization of what products? Do you think it's more sustainable, or is it again like just greenwashing?
I think we have to consider, are we just adding more capacity to the system and creating another way to market products? And essentially these digital things still require a use of energy. There's kind of this idea that, a sustainable economy is one that is based upon services and dematerializes. But the economies that's actually happening in are actually consuming more materials and more energy. It's the decoupling of economic growth and material use that's meant to be happening. It actually goes the other way. And that's because all of these this dematerialization capital move around and expand more quickly. So I think that people might intend well with it, but I think it takes us on a dangerous trajectory where dematerialization actually makes our economy like even more violent than it is, because we also, the other thing is we just lose connection with the fact that even if it's digital, the energy comes from the earth, it comes from the planet, it comes from nature. Like, you've got to have people in the Congo mining for minerals. So I'm quite scared of where that takes us.
To be honest, I have, I guess, a different perspective on the use of digital fashion. I think it's very far from it being, I guess, appealing from a consumer point of view. But from a brand point of view, I do see the benefit of having like digital designs, for example. So if you're a manufacturer, before you get to actually making a sample in real life, you can create a 3D CAD and actually see how that product would work or not once you then make it. So it can actually help to reduce wastage within the manufacturing process, for example. And it's the same with like pattern cutting and digitalizing that side of the process. And then when you touched on digital product passports, it's, I guess, again, for businesses to use as a way of making better decisions. So currently, a lot of brands get away with the fact that they don't know exactly where their clothes are made, but at a raw material extraction level. So they know where they produced it, like the factories, but then they don't know where the factories got the materials from and where those fabric mills actually extracted the raw materials from. So it's more so that brands can, in theory, trace back their supply chain so they can make better decisions and perhaps even invest in those farms and stuff like that. But it is a bigger problem. I don't know if it's a solution. I guess it's an option, and everybody seems to be obsessed with it because we haven't had anything like it to date. So everyone's like, this is going to be the next big thing, and that's what's going to make fashion and other industries more sustainable. Because a lot of the times we've been speaking about transparency and companies being able to communicate where their products come from, but they don't know. They actually don't really know. So in that sense, it can help them to make better decisions. Is it going to change? No, because ultimately, actually, it's what you said earlier. It's about degrowth, and we need to stop making things altogether. Let's start there. Forget about the digitalization of things. Forget about digital product passports. How about we assess everything that's already in existence in the world and redistribute it to people that need it? Because it really baffles me that we have so many clothes in the world that they then end up in landfills. But then if you go somewhere else, children haven't got shoes to wear to school. They're walking for like 2 hours barefoot. At least you watched a video about it. I think it was a place in Brazil on TikTok today. And I was like, that is crazy to me. Because all of these brands throw clothes away because it's cheaper than actually finding a solution. And then you look somewhere else and people haven't got shoes to wear to school. So how about we start there? When we talk about digitalization, why don't we just look at where there's needs for clothes and maybe ship it there if we can't sell them in the more mature markets, so to speak? That's my perspective on that side of things.
Maybe we've got time for one more question, if anyone wants to ask.
So I was going to ask the same question, actually, but I decided not to ask it because I realized the answer is no, that these big brands are not interested in having better processes and helping us. They're interested in growing and making more money. But the way I like to think about it is that every time you spend money, someone else benefits. So we can think about who benefits. So if I'm going to buy a pair of jeans and some kid on like Vinted gets 20 pounds, I'd much rather that kid get 20 pounds than Zara make 20 pounds, and I'll get something cooler too. So I'd say, I'm not like answering the question, I'm not qualified, but it's like, yeah, that's it basically. Yeah.
In terms of like money as well, I found it really interesting and productive to view money as means to an experience rather than can I afford something or not. if you have like a certain amount of money, a certain amount of spending money in a month, in terms of fashion as well, I found it really helpful to think like, would I rather buy this one thing that I think is cute, maybe it's a bit overpriced and it's from Zara, versus like I would spend like the same amount of money somewhere abroad on holiday for like a cute or locally made item, like that kind of like viewing money as a means rather than to an experience rather than as like a zero-sum game of can I have this or not, and kind of seeing it in that way I found very helpful as well, because it's also like who gets the money, but also you lose that money and what do you get for it. Like that's what I found more productive to think about for myself, where it's different for each person. Yeah.
Sorry, I remember what I was going to say. So basically the question was, will Zara become better? Will any of these brands become better? And seeing as the answer is basically no, let's kind of stop looking at these brands, because whatever you buy at Zara, you'll find another billion people wearing it. So personally, I like to find something. The hardest it is to find, the more it's worth your money, I'd say. Like archive stuff, there's enough vintage to go around everywhere in the world. And the last thing I wanted to say is thank you guys, because the panel was so thorough and you've answered everything so well. It's like really hard to add anything, or that's why there's no questions. Because you guys really answered.
Yeah, it's true, but like there's just, as a consumer, it can be sometimes like fucking crazy. Like these cycles are crazy. So you have places that sell things for secondhand, but the price is so upped. Like you go to like these places like Rocket, like Beyond Retro, which do sell shit for that secondhand ethical, but it's like £85, £100, and then they're doing their own upcycling of their own stuff, sold at like £70, £80. So like I focus on like charity shops and Vinted. I feel like that's all I can try to do at this point. But it's just crazy as a consumer that these sort of things that you guys are doing, like on the ground, doing out of passion and stuff like that, is displayed in these sorts of places. And it's all just profit to these companies that aren't, obviously they're not as big, but their ethos and models are the same. But the way they're packaged is so different. It's just hard out here, guys.
A lot of these companies as well, they market as vintage-like. I think it was like maybe even 10 years ago, because I got into vintage fashion quite a while ago, and so they would call it like vintage or vintage-like or patchwork, and there's no patchwork in it. It's the pattern that's been made in a factory just looks like a patchwork. And my advice to people, because is anyone familiar with Portobello Road? Yeah. So Portobello Road, the markets, their stuff, Portobello Road is so overpriced, but you have the stall holders and then you have even the vintage shops. They're so overpriced. And I say to people, do the work yourself. If you really are into vintage and you're into like specific brands, just go to the charity shops. Like as I was on the bus coming down, I saw so many, and I don't know what they're like around here in Dalston, but I know like a few years ago, I've been to the charity shops around here and they weren't that expensive. And that vintage jacket that you will find in Portobello Road, all that person done was look on Vinted, go out of London, go a trip. Yeah, they just done the work to try and find it. So just do the work. Like, it's so fun. Charity shops are fun. As you know, they're like Aladdin's cave. Like, oh my God, what am I going to find today? But when you are going and sourcing, know what you're looking for. Like, if you like, I want to find that Mickey Mouse jacket from 1999, just have it in your head. And good luck. Good luck.
Kind of what happened with Depop. Like someone goes out there, does all the work, finds all the cool stuff that people want to buy, puts it all together on their page, and then upmarks it so much.
No, it's very true. I feel like there definitely needs to be more like places that are affordable, kind of secondhand clothing. And that's why I'm going to go back to clothes swaps, just because I feel like they are probably like one of the most like affordable. I mean, affordable because it's like you're not paying anything, are you? Kind of sustainable way that, you know, your average like Tom, Dick and Harry can jump on, you know, because it's just like you can bring like a couple like items that you don't want to have, and then like, you know, and then you can go and like swap them for this and swap them for that. And I feel like a lot of people, if you don't want to do it with your friends, I've seen so many like clothes swaps that they do it like in loads of different like places. I'm sure you can just like write into Eventbrite, Facebook, all of those places. But they do a lot of clothes swaps around. I feel like that's the currently, as I know, probably like the best form. If you are conscious about spending and don't want to contribute to, you know, like high street brands and stuff. And also, like, I feel like with high street brands, just going back to what's it called, where everyone kind of just saying about all the brands and Zara, etc. And that, I just think, I think we just got to start from scratch. I think just cut them all out, really. Cut them all out, start from the ground up, get some new soil, keep it stepping type vibe.
Yeah.
That's my approach with them. But yeah.
Well, I think this is a good place to end, unless anyone else has anything to add. But yeah, thank you so much for coming and for engaging, listening to the panel, asking questions. If you want to watch the film online, it's on whybuyfilm.com, and it's also on my YouTube. You can pick up a postcard which has the social media and the website on it. And you can also find the information of my interviewees in the credits of the film if you want. We can just ask them. But yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.